All right. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Outside the Box Conversations. And today is going to be a conversation that is going to be very special to me. I've got an old friend on the show here in Bob Wills, and we've kind of struck up a friendship again as of late. I've known Bob since he was a small little kid, just like myself. He and I are around the same age. Bob, how's it going, man?
Good, buddy. How you? Thanks for having me.
I am wonderful, and I'm so glad to have you on the show. And I'm just thankful that you and I have gotten to talk a lot, over the past year, because you guys are doing some really interesting stuff down in Georgia. And I want to start by, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself and what it is that you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, glad to be on here, Ben. Thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to talking a little bit about it myself, as well as some of the things our companies are up to today. Ben and I do go way back, dribbling basketballs at age of 2, 3,
yes,
and watching our dad's fake dunk basketball. So a lot of good memories. I can't remember the street in Spartanburg, South Carolina, but I think we were our parents, we lived in a duplex, right? So we were next door neighbors for a couple years, but neither here nor there. I went to the University of Georgia for undergrad as pre-med, as a biology chemistry major. Stuck it through. Medical school didn't quite work out, and it led me to the chemical and ingredient distribution world out in Dallas, Texas. So I moved out to Dallas literally within 2 weeks of graduating. Knew nobody. Started with a startup company, and so the focus of today is going to kind of talk about, of course, CBD and the brand we launched, but kind of to segue to that, our business is I've worked for a business called Viapure, have for the last 13 years, and our focus is on the specialty chemical and ingredient distribution world. Kind of my baby of the company is the food, beverage, and nutrition space. And so typically what that entails, and people are familiar with these companies, is working with manufacturers such as Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Iovate Health Sciences, big brands in the beverage, nutritional to food space, nutrition bars, you name it. And you look at the back of ingredient decks, ingredient labels, all of those individual ingredients that make the consumer products we consume on a daily basis. That's exactly what we do. So it's our focus to get them from the manufacturer, from point A to our distribution facilities, point B, and then to brands, contract manufacturers all around the country, and or if they have their own manufacturing practices in house, getting them there. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we attend all these national trade shows: Supply Side West, Natural Expo West, East, Chicago IFT, and you all of a sudden you began to see CBD pop into that arena. Super interesting product. Hemp has been around for long periods of time. The history of hemp's actually it's a pretty phenomenal ride to kind of look back to its multi-purpose uses, medicinal to textiles, you name it. And so anyways, you started to see a lot of this activity pop up. Well, we began talking with a lot of the extractors. Some are still in business, some are not, and there's a lot of smaller shops popping up. But being that we're in the specialty world, in the food, beverage, nutrition arena, we saw a lot of interest by a lot of these big brands, as well as smaller brands out there on consumables that we see daily in our households and in grocery stores. And we're like, well, we need to get in this game. Well, obviously, with the Farm Bill, that kind of opened things up, the 2018 Farm Bill, along with some other legislation and pieces. The biggest challenge from a food, beverage, nutrition, and even into the personal care, health and wellness, topical style products, the FDA still hasn't made a ruling to give CBD its GRAS status. There's a lot of standardization in terms of manufacturing practices, good manufacturing practices, to how you can test this stuff across the board. You can get different results for the same lot number And so there's just some complications, things that need to be worked through. And, is the end near? If I had a crystal ball, I'd love to give a projection, but just don't have a clue. So a lot of your legacy brands out there, while they might be formulating with it and have products ready to go, you're not seeing it hit a lot of shelves. So that created an entire new market segment where you had a lot of these extractors and companies that went out on a limb that started producing products like this, tinctures that are loaded with hemp oil, MCT oil, broad spec, isolate, full spec, you name it, to products like this that would be a muscle balm or recovery balm or something along those lines. And so over the last 4 years, a lot has changed. It's become much more sophisticated. The innovation to separate all the cannabinoids and focus on your majors, your minors, your terpenes, you name it. It's out there, but it's created a market with a series of health and wellness products that are maybe non-traditional to what we currently see. So about 24 months ago, we decided, rather than sit on the sidelines with these large institutional companies that are, maybe playing with it but not really talking about it, we said, let's create a brand that focuses on the high-end ingredients that we supply, incorporate CBD, and let's launch a business, because let's get in it. We're missing out on an opportunity to put something good on the shelves. And so it was about a 24-month period, working with FDA lawyers to formulate to scientists, to finding contract manufacturers, and just quite the process. And then, of course, COVID-19 pops up, further delays things, had a big impact on the retail space. So the company Viachem, we founded American Pure Products, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Viachem, our we'll call it our legacy distribution business. And we created the brand Viapure. One of the things that we saw, of course, with COVID, and we see with a lot of the CBD brands out there today, many of them have we're in an e-commerce world. It's easy for us to go on a website, click a button, put your payment information, receive the product in 2 to 3 days. But when we saw the impact of COVID on small businesses, to the brick and mortars, to the retailers, we created a model. And to my knowledge and what I see out there, we're one of the few, if not one of the only ones, that specifically is focused on B2B commerce, to support those retailers, to help drive recurring revenue to their business, to not compete with them on a digital platform or an e-commerce. We see it and we hear it often, where you go into a store, you buy a product, and you like the product, you start researching it, you go to their website, next thing you know, you're 10% off, 5% off, 25% off, depending how long it sits in your cart. And what does that do to that brick and mortar, that retail store? I'd have to believe they lose a decent amount of business that way. So we're trying to build a brand that's focused on those partnerships with retailers, with pharmacies, with performance medicine groups like yourself, and health food stores and others, where we can help drive people to their place of business, to build a true partnership in a brand where there's brand loyalty, but also that they can continue to have that customer buy that from them, because the impact of the e-commerce world is pretty substantial to the traditional retailer. But in a nutshell, that's kind of, without rambling on too much longer, that's where we are today, and that's kind of where we started. And
well, Bob, I find so much of that fascinating, especially Viachem, what that is and how that went into something like the CBD space. For the listeners out there, I think all of us are becoming a little more wary of the ingredients in what we're eating. Can you talk to us a little bit more about, you said high-end ingredients, mm-hmm. and you guys deal a lot with the labels. Is there anything that the consumer that we can teach the consumer today about how to look at labels, what to look out for, anything along those lines? And then I want to kind of parlay that into CBD? Because I also think that's a huge concern with CBD right now.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously when you're building a product, and I'm not a retail expert, I'm a supply chain and ingredient guru. That's again where I hang out. There's always room for improvement. Looking at, how clean label of a product can you get? What's the shelf life stability? And there are certain limitations in terms of whether it be an ingestible or a topical. There are certain products that go into a skincare formula to help extend that shelf life. It can be pretty problematic and challenging if you only have a 3-month or 6-month shelf life or 1 year. And so, we're, again, what we have is not perfect. We're going to be working on it. But, when you look at the back of an ingredient deck, and I remember my organic chemistry professor said, you're becoming you're a science nerd or whatnot when you go to the store and you're looking at the back of an ingredient deck. I've been doing that since college. I've been doing that not necessarily just from a health conscious standpoint, because I'm kind of a guy, everything in moderation. But when you look at the back of an ingredient, less sometimes is more. More is oftentimes less. And so if it's something that's kind of hard to pronounce, typically that might be something that is not necessarily the best thing that should go. Now, you also have to, I guess, understand and look at it as you read an ingredient deck, and understand how to read an ingredient deck. The amounts of some of these products in a CBD product or something that you drink are very small. And so how harmful is it? I'm not a PhD scientist to talk too much into that. But, we try to build, our original formula started off looking like this, and then we just tried to button it up and get it as tight as possible. Just because I think the cleaner the label, for the, a CBD or health and wellness style product is, I think is better. And I think there's a lot of value that brings, because once you start bulking something up, the first thing I wonder about, if any sports supplement that I take, whether it's a pre-workout, during workout or recovery, is being an ingredient guy, where are these individuals sourcing this stuff from? A lot of your vitamins, a lot of your minerals, a lot of your amino acids come from India or China. Very few come from the US or Europe. And you look at where supply is today, and I know the purpose of the call is not to really get into supply, but with the tightness of supply, that contract manufacturer, what they're putting in the product, what is their vetting out process? How do they sample it? How do they do their bench work? Do they approve off spec? How do they do these things? And so it's important for us, as we go through it, knowing exactly who the manufacturer is. In our industry, there's a decent amount of relabel that takes place from an ingredients perspective. So really having that visibility in the all-around supply chain to make sure the CBD or the MCT oil is what it says it is. And I guess that's the one thing that my wife, I drive her crazy, and I think I drive some of my family members crazy, looking at organic, natural, all these different things. And I look at the back of the ingredient, and I'm like, ingredient deck, I'm like, how can this say it's organic when it contains this? Or they're stating it has this in it, but I look at the overall market, I look at imports, exports. The supply just is not there to have this mass-produced style product. So
you're like, it doesn't add up.
It's complicated. We'll put it that way.
Well, let me ask you, Bob, like, for the layperson, who isn't in it every day like you are,
Mm-hmm.
How can we know, like, if something says organic, how can we trust that it actually is organic? And, you mentioned a clean label, and what I'm assuming that means is just a small, there's a small amount of ingredients. How can we look at an ingredient deck and know, okay, this is sourced from a trustworthy manufacturer? How can we go about that when we're purchasing, stuff at the grocery store, or even vitamins or CBD oil?
Yeah, a lot of it's education, and that's one of our value props with our Viapure brand that we can talk about here in a few minutes, is supplying that information, that visibility, not only into the CBD, where it's farmed, where it's extracted, and where this product is done, but visibility into the whole process, so you can educate that retailer or that performance medicine group that's out there talking about the product, so they can speak to it in an educated manner.
Hmm.
I learn something new every single day, and I look at approved supplier lists for companies. I look at all these different things, and it still shocks me with even some of your larger Fortune 500 companies that might have, this manufacturer's approved. Well, they're not a manufacturer. They're a brand or distributor that buys from this trader that buys from this manufacturer. So it's been relabeled a number of times. So I think it's kind of hard to know if you're not in the nitty gritty of it every
Yeah.
single day. Again, I didn't know this world existed until I got into it, and you learn something new every day. But that's where the partnership comes in play.
Yeah.
And that's, again, one of the value props, what we're doing in terms of education, trying to be there for that retailer to walk them through the process. Hey, this is produced at this facility. This is why we chose this facility. Here's the accreditations. Here's the information. If you go online today and buy any type of product, it's hard to know. You assume if it's labeled as XYZ brand, that XYZ brand is who made the product. In many cases, that's not true. It's made at contract manufacturer. Maybe it's in California or Illinois or Georgia or Tennessee, wherever it may be. So the traceability aspect of it all is almost impossible for us to educate, because there's only so much time, and you're only in front of a patient or a customer for X number of minutes, and you can't go through every single ingredient. But that's our hopes, to be able to provide
Mm.
that visibility into the process. That, hey, these aminos are sourced here every single time you take our product. It's going to have this amino acid or this MCT oil. If we have a change or something in the formula, we're going to let you know that. Or if we have a better buying opportunity based on relationships in the market, we're going to be moving from a palm MCT to a coconut MCT, and here is why. We're going to be moving towards an organic X versus a conventional X because of this. So you really kind of get a better understanding of how it all ties in to create this product that's sitting here today. There's a lot of moving parts to that puzzle.
So what I'm hearing you say there is traceability
Yeah,
is huge.
sure.
Being able to kind of work your way backwards from, okay, how did this get on the shelf and where did it come from?
Yeah.
And that's what I find so fascinating about a company like Viachem, who's like, that's what they do is
Mm-hmm.
is you guys go right to the, the source of everything, and then you get into CBD. What has been, what do we need to know about the CBD industry, and how are you guys applying, that knowledge you have in high-end ingredients to, the CBD world?
Yeah, it's just a process. This is an ever evolving process, and change is inevitable, and the evolution of where CBD is today from where it started. Again, I still call myself a novice in this world, and in terms of technical and details and getting into all the nitty gritty of it, there's a lot of people that know it a lot better than myself. But when you look at CBD and you look at traceability, um, there's just so much that goes into it, from the farms, the sustainability of it. When you look at how to get to an organic compliant status and USDA certified organic, there's so much criteria and content that rests on the farmers that are growing the hemp, as well as to the production of the actual end use product. As far as CBD goes, I think one of the complications, and that you see it, and firsthand for us, is when you send your products off for third party testing. You can send your product off to as many labs as you want to, and you're probably going to get different test results. They might be all in the same ballpark, but you're going to have different results come from the same lot number and the same exact product across the board. And so again, it's the maturation of the process, the testing capabilities, the standardization of it all. It's complex. I relate this a lot to, stevia is a very well-known sweetener. We're
Yes.
big in the stevia mix, and our company Viachem was one of the first distribution groups to bring offshore sweeteners when you look at sucralose and other products into the market. But stevia's only been around for a bit of time, but in terms of commercial availability on shelves, at local coffee shops, tabletops, you name it, it's still not been around. So if you start to dive back deep in detail, just looking at stevia, now it's different than the health benefits of CBD, but very similar. It's still maturing. You started at a 60% glycoside level. Now you're up to 99%. Now you're seeing Reb M and Reb D and all these different blends that are coming out. You're seeing the same thing happen with CBD. So as the innovation and the science drives to it, and we learn more, and the studying and the shelf life, stability, all the different criteria that go into developing a market and an ingredient. I think we'll continue to learn a lot more about the functionality of CBD, all the other cannabinoids that exist within cannabidiol, your CBG, CBNs, you name it, as well as the terpene contents. But for the average, user of it, there's things that you look for. You look for, is it an isolate-based product? Is it a broad spectrum-based product? Is it a full spectrum product? We have a lot of this on our website.
Can you go into that just a little bit, because that's
Yeah.
one thing I did want to ask you was like,
Sure.
okay, what are the difference between an isolate product versus a non-isolate and the whole spectrum deal? What
Sure.
are we looking for?
Yeah, so on our website, and I can provide this information to you to share. But we said we've got 4 or 5 videos. Get your CBD PhD, essentially breaking down. Yeah. And again, this is stuff I didn't know when we started looking at it. But what are the differentiating factors between an isolate-based product to a broad spec to a full spec? The isolate is strictly CBD, nothing else, no other. It's not almost, I think it's up to 99.9% pure CBD. It doesn't contain the terpenes. It doesn't contain any other, the cannabinoid profile, like maybe a little CBN or CBG. It is strictly, it's an isolated compound. So, there's a lot of noise in the marketplace, depending on who you talk to, the pros and cons to it. If you talk to some folks in the nutrition space, some may say no problem, use it. Others be like, not touching it. That's an isolated compound. That should be an API, an active pharmaceutical style product. So that's in a nutshell, and kind of in layman terms what isolate is. When you get to kind of the next way to the next product, and I guess backtrack real quick, the isolate. A lot of people are comfortable with isolate because it is about as clean as you can get from a THC level. You can pretty much say 0 THC. But the argument from the other arena, when people start talking about isolate, talking about broad spec, and you're losing out on all the other the valuable terpenes. You think about when you eat vegetables, all the phytochemicals and all the good stuff you're getting by eating a pepper or broccoli or
Right.
whatever it may be, you're not getting that with an isolate style product. With a broad spec, you're getting those terpenes, you're getting the other cannabinoid profiles. While it might be smaller trace amounts, it may be higher concentration of CBD. There's a little bit of CBG in there. There's a little bit of CBN in there, and depending on how you break it down, specializing formulas, that's what you're looking at. The industry, standard with, certain Delta 9 THC content is what a lot of folks look for. That has improved dramatically. One of the differentiating things about our product, as well as we're a 0.00% Delta 9 THC true broad spec product. So you've got distillate.
So no THC. You probably can't say that, but
right. Yeah, correct. And so when you see something that uses broad spec and says no THC, it's probably non-detectable from a testing aspect, and such trace elements, it probably wouldn't show up. But when you talk broad spec or full spec, to my knowledge, I don't think that you can really go out there and market and say no THC, because in my view, I look at isolate or something, it's got to be entirely pure, 99.9995%, for you to say, hey, no THC. So
it would have to be an isolate in order to really be able to come out and say there's no THC. But if you're in any sort of broad spectrum, you can't technically say no THC.
I don't, from a technicality standpoint and, regulation standpoint, how you label the product, I guess it's up to the brand. And I'm sure I could sit here and talk with folks for hours about it. I think we would like to err on the side of being conservative. We can say 0.00% Delta 9 THC and, back it up with C of A's and things of that nature. But I don't, with a broad spec product, don't necessarily think that you would test positive on a drug test if you consume this. However, from a label perspective, we've been advised to be careful saying no THC, being that we're formulating. But there's all sorts of, this is a wormhole that we could go down and talk for days and nights. But there's different ways to call yourself, broad spec, and you can basically have isolate and add back the terpenes and bulk your product up to call it broad spec. But one of the things we have is a true broad spec product that goes through very low temperature extraction processes, and it's about as close to natural of the ingredient while limiting the amount of THC. So it takes it a step further. Kind of the next product that you see is the full spectrum product that's on the market that goes up
so there's not a full spectrum out there. So Viapure is broad spectrum, and what you're saying, the future is heading towards full spectrum.
Well, you've got the three out there. There's a lot of full spectrum products up there, but for those users and those people that are concerned, maybe they're a truck driver, or maybe they're in law enforcement, or they're subject to drug tests. Maybe they work at a car plant. If you go and consume enough full spectrum product, depending on your metabolic processes and your genetic makeup and whatever else, that you are consuming up to the legal limit of THC. Now, will that show up on a drug test? I can't really speak to it because I've not consumed it and tested, but that's one of the concerns. So trying to get to that broad spectrum, and what a lot of people like to call the entourage effect, that you're getting the benefits from all those other cannabinoid profile as well as the terpenes and everything from that raw plant. That's what folks what some people look for, and a lot of what you see the entourage effect thrown out there quite often when you're looking at CBD. That's the key differentiating factor between the isolate, the broad spec, to the full spec. The full spec is going to contain up to the 0.3%, Delta 9 THC, and of course you've got Delta 8 THC, and you're seeing all these Delta 8 products pop up, which you can test hot on a drug test for it, because the focus has always been on the Delta 9. But the Viapure product and what we're working with today is exclusively a broad spec product. Now, we did recently, and we talked about this offline, but we recently acquired a company called EMB Entity. It's the Entity Muscle Balm. This is an isolate-based formulation with a lot of herbals and black pepper in it. It's a pretty cool formula product that we're bringing in the mix. We'll probably look at transitioning that from an isolate to a broad spec. But as we work through the inventory with it, so we do have this, not Viapure branded today, but it is an isolate-based topical formula. But other than that, broad spec, we're believers in broad spec. We like broad spec. I'm a user of broad spec product. And that's just the direction we're going at the current moment.
Yeah, that's super interesting, the broad spectrum there. And so, when we talk about Viapure, Viapure is a broad spec CBD. What else? What other differentiators are there between Viapure and maybe some of the others that people are seeing right now?
Yeah. So again, our model, our business model is totally different. We're going to be a B2B versus a B2C. In terms of market exposure, brand awareness, perhaps that handcuffs us a little bit, but we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and it's a little bit unique from the standpoint that a lot of these other big brands out there, and not going to drop any names on it, but a lot of them have these huge e-commerce platforms where you and I can go on there with a few clicks of the button and buy the product. And so they're always in competition with their retailers, whether their retailers like it or not. Now that might not matter to some people in this day and age. And I've talked to a handful of very seasoned retailers, not specific to the CBD space, and the retail that are in whether it's clothing or nutritional supplements. They 10 years ago they said, hey, that's something that would really resonate. But in today's world, everybody expects these manufacturers or these brands that are coming out there to have that e-commerce. So that's a huge value prop for us. I think the other pieces to it, a lot of these brands that exist, while they do have formulation experts on hand and people working on formulas and playing with it, they rely heavily on their contract manufacturers to do all the sourcing for them. So our hands are in the process from start to finish. A lot of times, we don't supply every ingredient under the sun, but a lot of the key ingredients, and in terms of high volume and concentration, we're making sure that that specific ingredient is being used in our product by this specific manufacturer. So we do have a little bit of a unique vantage point in that arena, in my opinion, because we know all the big MCT players out there. We know those who relabel product. We know where this comes from when there's a bottleneck in production. Looking at the global impact of supply chain with things like what's taking place with the Suez Canal. We inventory a lot of these ingredients in the U.S., so that's another piece to the puzzle that I think we do bring a kind of a unique perspective. CBD is super important, and you want to get the CBD right. When I talk to individuals, and just like on this call, I think you also want to get all of your other ingredients right, and you want to, hey, are they responsibly sourced? Are they the manufacturing? Do they have your non-GMO documents? Do they have the ISO certifications, kosher, halal, you name it? What's the shelf life on the MCT that's being used in this product, or the xanthan gum, or the Arnica montana, or these herbals? Where does this come from? Does it come from China? Does it come from Brazil, Europe, the US? And that's I think another big value add, and something that we don't talk too much about because a lot of people are focused on the CBD, but that's just another aspect of visibility into the entire process that I think we bring to the table. And the fact that we're in with a lot of these contract manufacturers across the country, and we know the good ones that are making powdered supplements for ready to drink beverages, the ones that are making topical solutions, your lotions, your balms, your creams, to your stick packs, to your tinctures. We go and walk through the facility. We know the people who are running the product. We know their support staff, and really integrate and try to build partnerships. And we want our retailers to know exactly where this stuff is made, where this stuff is coming from.
Well, I think that's the coolest part of Viachem being the umbrella of Viapure. I think that's what's super cool about it. And I do want to ask, because I've gotten some feedback in office. Viapure tastes better. Yeah. Is there, from an ingredient standpoint, is there a reason why it's a better tasting CBD than maybe others?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the purity level, and what you're from a CBD perspective, that's one bit. A lot of your tinctures out there today utilize hemp oil, which is hempy tasting, and they try to mask a lot of that with other flavors. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I think shelf life, stability, flavor profile, how is it stored with sunlight over time? Things do break down, and
and that all impacts the taste.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, how well does a lemon react with a hemp oil to your CBD oil or your other products? That's a lot to be learned. We utilize MCT oil in our product that's pretty much colorless and flavorless. And so while you have a bit of the probably hempy taste that's associated with, your broad spec CBD, if you ate or consume that raw, you would really taste it. We throw in some stevia and some peppermint, and
it was the peppermint one that
yeah. So
was
it
getting a lot of good
literally,
feedback.
and I would agree. I've tried a lot of tinctures. I think our formula. I think it is a better taste. It tastes like I just consumed a peppermint. It almost gives me a little bit of a fresh breath. But a lot of the products I have tasted out there, when you get into the broad spec profile, are certainly very hempy. Some people don't mind it, and it's not too offensive to me because I know what I'm getting into, and you kind of expect it once you've sampled a lot of these products. But the flavor, we're starting with a peppermint. We can go a lot of different ways and avenues. But to get started, we've been working on this for 24 months, but we've only really been knocking on doors and having product to sell for about 2 months now. So there's a lot of time that we put into this, and just trying to create things that would be well received, smell good. And again, our product's not going to be for everybody, and totally get it. And there's improvement on all fronts on our end, from a packaging perspective to label perspective to cleaning up our labels to taste to smells. But I think we did all right for our first go, and we're excited about where we're at today, and the interest. We got to continue to spread our wings and create that partnership not only with the retailer but with the retailer's customers, so they come back and they're like, "Hey, I like this. This tastes good. I see the benefits of this." And
well, you guys are doing such a good job. I've been so impressed throughout this whole process. And I got one more question for you, and it's industry specific.
Yeah.
Where do you see the CBD industry going, especially as we move towards most likely an environment where marijuana is legal? Where's there going to be a divider? Is there going to be a place for CBD? And what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, that's a question we get all the time. I certainly think so. I think that, one of the things you got to be really careful about, for me in conversation, getting in, making claims. I see the benefits of CBD personally. I'm not going to get into some of the bits and pieces. I've been using it pretty religiously for about a year now, specifically to some of the formulas we put together for ourselves. And, I've seen some things. Maybe I don't really feel like I carry too much of a stress load. I'm a pretty even keel individual, but maybe my body was dealing with some stresses that maybe were just internalized, that you would never know that I was stressed out. So I've seen some bits and pieces of, some relief in that area. Is it placebo effect? I don't truly believe it is. I think it is something that is actually real. But to get back to your question, we get that question all the time about the legalization of marijuana. All these Delta 8 gummies and formulas and things. I think that there will be something that comes in, that you look at some of these Delta 8 products that are out there. I think at the end of the day, and there are certain jobs, whether marijuana is legal or not, that they're still not going to want you to test positive for marijuana or for Delta 9, even if it's federally approved or it is state approved. I think that there's still going to be bits and pieces there, but I also think there's a massive amount of the population that does not want to have any psychoactive impact of, getting high or in that kind of that frame of chill state of mind. I'm one of those people, and I want to always try to maintain, a clear
Sure.
state of mind, and I don't want to be impaired by any means. And I know that there's, the medical marijuana to marijuana in general, and just the whole cannabis sector. There's different strains, there's different potency levels. And, I think I'm fascinated by a lot of that stuff. But for me, I think people are going to want to receive some of the benefits that cannabinoids can bring to the table without having to worry about, am I going to get a little bit buzzy or am I not going to get buzzy? And I think
Right.
that it's got a place. I think you're seeing a lot of investment in this industry. There's a lot of bold projections of where it's going from just a dollar and global and just national economic impact. I don't see it going anywhere. I think we're still early in the process, and the maturation of CBD to the CBGs and all these other, majors and minors that we're finding, I think is the tip of the iceberg, and I think it's here to stay. That's me personally.
That's fascinating. Man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited with where this is going. I'm excited about Viapure, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. This has been so much fun. Why don't you just put up your product one more time so people can see? It comes in how many forms, Bob?
Yeah. So this is our retail box, and this is, what our standard tincture is. We're always looking at, what are new products? We had to get in the game. We're not reinventing the wheel by any means. We've got 3 different milligram tinctures. We got a 500, 1,000, and a 1,500. There's still a lot of confusion in terms of dosage and what people, hey, what should I do? Well,
Exactly. Nobody knows.
And I think that I can sit here and tell you what to do and try it, but I think everybody is different, and you just have to find out what works. We've got a balm. This one of the cool things about it, it's got golden jojoba oil in it, but this is more of a waxy style. It's kind of hard to see here, but a waxy style balm that you would rub on your hands and massage it in. We've got kind of a traditional roll-on that, let's see if unscrew it here, that had your traditional ball roll-on that's kind of a muscle balm as well. And then we have our airless pump lotion, that hand cream, moisturizer, you name it, that contains 500 milligrams of true broad spec CBD. So there's more to come. Gummies are obviously a big arena that a lot of folks are playing in. There's all sorts of different formulation and sophistication, multivitamin gummies, and there's bath bomb. There's all sorts of ways we can take it. But again, not reinventing the wheel here. We had to kind of get your core products to get in the game, and from here we'll continue to build out different products. And we're excited to where this brand can go. And what our vision is having products that are specific to certain arenas. So maybe it's Viapure, and have them color related to the spa industry, to the pharmaceutical, to pharmacy industry, to health and wellness, to performance medicine type individuals, to maybe looking at getting into other areas, sports, fitness, and golf, and tennis, or football, you name it. I think CBD is here to stay, and we're excited to finally be in the mix. It was a long time coming, and now we just got to get out there and get a bunch of retail partners on board, and give them the service, and see, give them just the overall picture on supply chain, cutting down lead times. There's so much we could talk about, and the gaps in supply chain, lead times, having inventory. We bring a very in depth, and while Viacom is 15 years old today, We bring a wealth of knowledge into the distribution space. Where our company's is made from individuals that have collective 100+ years of experience in the whole supply chain, chemical and ingredient distribution space. So that when you look at the overall cost of doing business, there's a lot of different pieces that we're focusing on, and we're hoping that we can relate that and educate these retailers and give them the tools that they need to maintain and build a very, very profitable business on their end as well.
Well, I just love how you guys have brought your expertise into this arena, because it's such to me it's a missing link in the CBD world, and you guys are applying that beautifully. And I'm excited with where Viapure is going. I've been impressed with the sprint you guys have been on the last couple of months.
Yep.
And I look forward to keeping up with you about it. And what we'll need to do, Bob, is get you back on the show with with updates. And there's so many things that you brought up in this conversation that we could dive deep on. So I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. We'd love to be welcome back. And there's a lot of different talking points. And could probably hit 15-20 minutes just talking about. I've got some what I think are interesting talking points that we're a cannabinoid deficient society. And so a lot of individuals, how we got cannabinoids in the past that we didn't even realize it from eating chickens or consuming beef or eggs or milk, because a lot of these, cows, chickens, you name it, pigs, were consuming hemp meal and different things like that. So we were getting some of these cannabinoids and we didn't even know it. I've got a cool history of hemp, about 30-minute video that I organized with a guy who is certainly more leaps and bounds ahead of me in terms of industry expert. I'll share that with you, and I think you'll be fascinated. It's pretty cool to watch it through, look at the eradication of hemp, looking at all these different things. Again, I'm not saying it's a cure-all, and it's not going to work for everyone, but I think the biggest piece is educating individuals as to, hey, what this is that's on the shelf, being able to discern between the different isolate, the broad, the full spec, and getting comfortable with CBD. And it might work for you, it might not work for you, but it's not, I think it's 38% of the population I think today, and that number is growing, knows what CBD is, or they've heard of it. And so there's a lot of non-traditional retail avenues that I think this is something that could fit in the mix of their operation and just further education. We look forward to the opportunity just to answer questions, and whether anybody buys something or not, getting them familiar with it, and hey, try it out. It might work for you, it might not work for you, but give it a run and just check it out.
It's so fascinating, and you
really
just mentioning the meat industry and the food industry in general. And how we've gotten to where we are now, we've got to do a full episode on that.
Yeah, but science is cool. The human body is cool, and I think we're all looking for areas of how can we improve certain things. We have this going on in our lives or this going on in our lives, and not just being educated, and that's our job in terms of all the ingredients and what we're doing to provide that content and that information to get people comfortable and give them the service that they demand. So if you were to, as a consumer, if you went and bought this from one of your local CBD shops or pharmacies, that if you were to call up, you couldn't buy this from me unless you wanted to provide your IEN number or EIN, whatever it is, your federal tax exempt certificate and all that type of thing, or state. But we could answer questions for you. We could give you the customer service and try to help educate you on our products. I do it just for fun every now and again, and hey, try it out sometime. But look at some of these major brands that are out there, some of which have been sucked up by private equity and others. Call their customer service line and see how much information you can get. Hey, where's this stuff? Where's this stuff farmed? Where's it come from? In Colorado or California? Okay, where specifically? What region? Hey, where is the actual tincture that I'm consuming right here? I'm using your 1,000 milligram peppermint broad spec product. Where is this made? what, is it made in the USA? Most of it is, but where in general is it? So those are things that I'm hoping that will resonate with individuals, so that I can walk them through and say, this is made here. There's some things that we can't talk about just from a confidentiality aspect, but giving people the comfort level, hey, this is the process. This is kind of how it is. And this is made in a strictly food grade facility. There's nothing else being made here except food products or supplements. There's no allergens here. There's just so much that goes into it. And
well, you just dropped, a huge gem there, and just knowing that you can call these places and ask these questions, and you can get a feel for, whether or not they're super open about it or not,
or knowledgeable, and they might not even be provided that information. So again, it's kind of it's not to call anybody out or look at it, but go try to figure this out. See where stuff is actually put into the bottles, and ask them, hey, I'm looking at the back of your tincture. I see that you've got MCT oil on here. Who's the manufacturer of that MCT oil? And I would have to believe that a lot of these individuals probably wouldn't be able to tell you too much about it. Maybe some people care, some people don't care, but again, that's another piece of the puzzle that we're hoping does resonate. And I think it's pretty cool that we can walk you through the entire process. Hey, here's your 3 major players in the world of MCT oil. Here's your major players for this ingredient. This is where this stuff typically comes from. Walk them through. Not everybody cares about that, but
let me
that's
ask
the aspect that I think is pretty cool.
I think it's super cool, and I'll ask you just point blank: should they care?
Well, I think so. Personally, there are certain brands of products out there that, being in this industry, that I won't buy their products because I know what their buying habits are. I know where they buy their stuff from. I know what they're focused on. And, everybody tells you quality, quality, quality. But again, maybe I know too much being in the ingredients space, and I see it on a daily basis. And again, everything in moderation, in my opinion. But, that I think it's important. I pay attention to those things. Again, I'm in the industry, so I need to care and pay attention to those things. I mean, there's certain brands of ingredients that we're not going to sell and promote into the marketplace, because I know that, this is again another topic of conversation. I'm glad to talk about at any given time, but I could rattle off some major, some product that goes into some products out there. This plant's been shut down for a year or two. They're buying somebody else's product, repurposing it, putting it on their own label, creating C of A's tied to that repurposing of the product. And then that goes in to all these things. I've seen it firsthand. I've heard it firsthand. And I've been in a lot of these plants around the world that are producing all these ingredients that go into things that we consume and put on our skin on a daily basis. Not all of them. But I don't know.
Well, I think
should you care? I think it's a personal preference. To each their own, right?
I personally think you should care. And I think that people are becoming more and more aware of this sort of thing now. Mm-hmm. And I think that people are going to start calling these places and kind of doing their due diligence, because, we're big believers in, what you put in your mouth is determines your health, so you got to be conscious of it. So
I think so. And a lot of, fact finding missions. I mean, it's just part of the game. It's fun. Again, this is the space that I'm in, and it's important for us to know where things are coming from. Have we been in situations where we've probably bought stuff? I guess we're all maybe sometimes in the distribution space or just ingredient world. We're not there every step of the way. And so somebody could see this and like, well, how can you guarantee you're not there every single time? But from years in the space, partnering up with specific people, specific companies, and looking at the big picture and longevity of it all. There are occurrences where something might transpire. But for the most part, I feel like we do a pretty daggum good job of it.
Well, it certainly sounds like it, man. I'm just so happy to have you on, Bob.
Yeah.
It's great talking to you. Bob Wills with Viapure. Guys, check it out. As always, thank you for joining the show and hanging out with us. Don't go away because we will be back next time. See you guys.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Don't go away.